Hi, and welcome to the Chronedo podcast, the show where we talk about watches, business, and life. In today's episode, I'm chatting with Stian, a watchmaker, entrepreneur, and YouTuber with over 130,000 subscribers on his channel. By the way, this episode is part 2 of our conversation. Part 1 is available on Stian's YouTube channel, Vintage Watch Services. You will find the link in the description or simply search for Vintage Watch Services on YouTube. Originally from Norway, Stian now lives in Switzerland and has turned his passion for watches into a full-time business. We talk about how he went from collecting 42 watches and paying huge sums for servicing them to learning watchmaking himself and starting his own vintage watch company. He also shares insights on challenges and joys of working with vintage timepieces, why mechanical watches still fascinate people in the digital age, and how he's now building his own watch brand called Northern Watches, inspired by his Nordic roots and natural landscapes. It's a really interesting conversation about following your passion, entrepreneurship, and why sometimes time is really more valuable than money. So let's dive in. I hope you enjoy listening. And I think that's an important topic for entrepreneurs, to think about that question. What is important for me? What do I prioritize? Do I prioritize time over money, or where do I find the balance between these two factors? I think that's a really important question. Yeah. But often people talk about success, and success for them is money or to have power, maybe.
Yeah. Might also be a reflection on age, right? So when I left the career rat race, I was 50. So I just turned 50, and I thought, man, am I going to be doing this for another 20 years, and then probably die from a heart attack So
Definitely, yeah.
I'm very
And
happy with the choice.
yeah, and my belief is that you should like what you do.
Yeah.
In the end, you cannot like always, it's like, but as like it as much or have a passion for it as much as possible. And then in the end, if you earn a lot of money with that, it's fine, but it's not necessary to earn a lot of money with that job or hobby or whatever.
No, man, it's a big philosophical discussion, of course, It's like, are you living to, what's the word? Are you working to live or live to work? And a lot of people say, yeah, I'm just going to put in 5 more years and then I'm going to retire. And that's basically a different way of saying that I hate my job. So I think I kind of made a vow that I would die at my bench, hopefully while streaming, so I get a lot of views, But I really love what I do, so it's, then it's not a matter of trying to just keep on for a few more years. It's a matter of doing what you love.
So right now you are I think your business model works like that. You buy watches, you maybe find them for a good price, and then you resell them. Maybe you service them also, but I think that's your business model in the end, no?
Yeah, it is. So I have, let's say, 3 main suppliers that find watches for me. And then being in Switzerland, I also find quite a few watches myself. So those 3 suppliers, they sort of told me which watches they have, and then I, buy some of those. And then I have 3 watchmakers I work with that help me. I'm a certified watchmaker myself, but also, I'm just one guy, so I wouldn't be able to service all that many watches. Some of the watches also do case restoration and that kind of thing on. But for vintage watches, the condition of the watch, the originality of the watch are, let's say, the key value factors. So once you find fully original watches in good condition, then servicing them, cleaning them up, then giving a warranty, of course. And I think that's part of what I find important as a business, to regain trust and have a good customer relationship.
Mm-hmm. And I think your YouTube channel will help you with that, you know. People will maybe trust you more if they know your YouTube channel.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
know you're an expert in that field and they can trust you, you know.
Yeah, I think probably those watching my YouTube channel might find that I'm predominantly an expert in dad jokes. But no, I do hope that my sort of dedication, professionalism, also comes through in the YouTube videos. And of course, in the YouTube videos, I also tell everyone that I have a website. So that does drive quite a lot of sales. So yeah.
When and how did you start with the YouTube channel?
Yeah, so I'm gonna maybe break some news here. I am planning to launch my own brand, and that is actually extremely close. I'm just waiting to get some videos back from the photographer, and then I can start the marketing. So the whole reason I started my YouTube channel was actually to build an audience for launching my own brand. So I was thinking, you know, maybe I can get this up to 10,000 subscribers. Then I have a pretty good base, you know, to show my watch to, or my watches. I have 2 models initially. And due to a lot of things, COVID, some manufacturer issues, the whole thing took a bit longer than expected. And then, you know, in the meantime, my YouTube channel started growing. At some point, I got to thinking that, okay, I have to take this a little bit more seriously. So, yeah, I think now it's 130,000 subscribers, which is pretty good.
Yeah, congratulations for that. That's also success, you know.
Yeah.
And how
Thank
many, you know, if you would place these viewers into a room and you think about you talk in front of these numbers of people, it's crazy. No?
Yeah. I think the biggest measure of success for that is that my kids give me some street cred now, you know. It's like Popeye's a YouTuber, you know, instead of just a watchmaker.
But when did you started with the channel? Also back in 2019 or?
No, it was probably 2020, maybe 2021.
Wow. And you just started to upload videos without the concept, or did you maybe take some courses on how to make successful YouTube videos, or how did you start with that?
No, I just, you know, watched a lot of videos. At the time, the sort of best watch repair videos were Mark Lovik's, the watch repair channel. Very sound advice in what he does. He hasn't been that active the last few years, but I think a lot of, you know, budding watch repair students learned a lot from his videos. I used to do more software as well. So at some point, I was actually, what they call it, Adobe certified expert in Photoshop, Illustrator. So I felt sort of comfortable with those products. So I also acquired Adobe Premiere Pro, and then I started recording. And I think it's clear from the first few videos that wasn't, you know, they're not good videos. It's like a lot of hands in front of the camera and shaky hands and shaky camera and those things. I think I probably deleted a few of those videos. But they got quite a few views, and yeah. So it was, the start of a longer journey, I'd say.
Quick 15-second ad. Hi, I'm Ken from the Chronedo podcast. I want to let you know that you can join our community, the Chronedo Circle, for exclusive giveaways, behind the scenes, and key takeaways from every episode. Sign up for free at chronedo.com/community. And what do you think? What makes your videos successful? Or what made it successful in the end? Your dad jokes.
Yeah, my dad jokes for sure. I know a lot of people sort of comment on that. The thing is, running commentary on videos like this, honestly, I get a little bit bored. It's not just saying that, yeah, I'm taking out this screw here and there. And that's like, okay, it's not that interesting after a while. So I start just floating off and talking about stuff that happens, with my life or my kids or something I've seen or whatever. And people do like that. At least most of them seem to do. But I think probably that I am a trained professional, that I have, let's say, a good skill level, that I work on complicated watches. I think I'm the only one who's disassembled a Tourbillon watch on YouTube, for instance. So some of those things I think are, attractive to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you started the YouTube channel with the intention to bring out your own watch. How did you, when I was, it's interesting because when I was maybe 19, 20 years old, I also had the idea to start to design my own watch. And then my end goal was to produce it, for me, only for myself. I didn't thought about selling a watch because I thought, no, that wouldn't be possible. So I thought I just want to be able in my life to design a watch and make it work. Doesn't matter what it costs. I will spend all my money. So, but I faced in the end, I started to see it's a big challenge even with designing the watch in a 3D software.
Yep.
It was like crazy, but I managed to design it, but I've never completed it in the end. So, but it would be interesting to hear from your side, how can you take us through the process, how you build your own watch?
Yeah. Yeah, so do you have any sort of watchmaking background or in your
No,
family
no,
or
no,
anything? Or
no, no,
okay.
nothing.
Yeah. No, I mean it probably starts with a vision, right? Of something you want to create, and you have your personality, you have sort of things you like, that are important to you, that kind of thing. For me, I am Norwegian. I grew up up in the mountains, doing a lot of outdoor activities, skiing a lot, climbing, doing all those things. And then I lived for 17 years in the Netherlands, which has none of those things because it's flat. And then when I moved to Switzerland, then I sort of felt like coming home in a sense because it's a lot the same nature, dramatic mountains, snow, ice, what have you. So when I started thinking about my own brand, and I think it's pretty much a dream for all watchmakers to make their own brands, For me, that sort of identity of something, rugged, dramatic, close to nature, snow and ice, mountains. That's sort of what I wanted to try to convey in my watches. So my first models use things like a stone dial, bronze material. I'm sort of trying to make one of the models kind of resemble like a wintry landscape. So that whole, closeness to nature is important. So the brand for the slogan for the brand is "Time Naturally." So trying to sort of convey those things, but also how you actually view time. Because, I mean, time, a day has 24 hours, right? But almost all watches only show half the day, which is just something we've been sort of used to, you know? So my watches will also show the full 24 hours. Part of the reason I decided to do that is that I mentioned I have this really beautiful Jaeger LeCoultre memo box, which is an alarm watch. So, you set the alarm to a certain time and then it rings. But obviously, if you set it to 5 o'clock and you do that in the evening, it's going to ring at 5 o'clock in the morning. So, I was thinking, man, that's not too good. It should be 24 hours. And same thing if you have a watch with a date and you know that you shouldn't change the date if it's close to midnight. But if it's been a while, you don't know if it's close to midnight or close to, what do you call it? 12 o'clock in the afternoon? Noon? So, a lot of these things I thought it's just more natural that it's 24 hours. So all in all, my watch is, every dial is unique because it's a natural stone. It shows 24 hours. I put the date window close to where you wake up in the morning. So around 6 o'clock, because that's probably where your eyes are going to go when you wake up in the morning. There's a lot of thinking that went into this whole, how do we actually show time in a more natural way? And how do we connect that to a closeness to natural elements?
That sounds really interesting. So soon you're gonna publish the marketing material, I think also a YouTube video, or how do you plan to market it? Do you have an online shop especially for that watch, or do you sell it in your vintage watches shop?
Oh, it's going to be a separate entity. It's a separate company. It's a public or limited company, so completely separate from that sense. The website is up already. It's northernwatches.com. So the brand name is also Northern Watches, sort of also to, allude to that whole up north kind of feeling of it. I'm going to launch it on Kickstarter. So that will be, I'll do the pre-launch, hopefully starting this week. And then the actual launch, I'm not sure. I'm working with our advertising agency for Kickstarter crowdfunding. That will help me sort of pull the trigger at the right point.
Second and last ad. If you want to support this podcast and get a free gift, go to chronedo.com/support, or simply follow me on Instagram or YouTube and share this episode with your friends. I'd truly appreciate it. On that topic, I saw some YouTube videos. There are a lot of strategies behind the Kickstarter campaign. I've never thought about that, but if you really deep dive into that topic, it's crazy what you learn.
Yeah, it is. It is really, excuse me.
And what's the goal of the Kickstarter campaign? Do you already know that, or for how much you sell the watches?
Yeah, so the watches are actually, I think they are at least quite distinct. The lugs on the watches are actually extremely difficult to make. So each lug is actually machined separately from one piece of metal and then screwed into the case. So it's a pretty complicated watch. It has a Salita GMT movement. So what I'm doing is I'm not using the hour wheel on the watch, but I'm putting the hour hand on the GMT wheel. So what that means is that the hour hand will follow the 24-hour GMT wheel around. So the hour hand on my watch goes around once in 24 hours. Yeah. So it's, let's say a quick solution to being able to show 24 hours on a dial. So it's not a cheap watch. There are two models. One is called Bronze Age. It's a bronze case with a dark stone dial. And the other one is called the Northerner. It's a stainless steel case with a white dial, both stone dials and both unique to each single watch. The prices will be around 2,000 euros. And in the Kickstarter will be the first, let's say the VIPs will get a close to 50% off of the watches.
Oh, wow. Oh, we're looking forward to that campaign. So that's an interesting project. And did you design the watch, or did you work together with some suppliers of watch components that designed the case and the dial, or how?
I designed everything myself. So I also taught myself how to use some 3D programs, CAD programs. But there are some things that you need more knowledge to do. So I had this mentor and a good friend in the Netherlands who also had his own watch brand. Actually just launched a very interesting watch himself. And he helped me with some things like, for instance, distance between each hand, distance between the hands and the crystal, like those things that you really need to know. Distance from the rotor to the back crystal. And then I worked with a Swiss company to manufacture it. So the whole watch will be Swiss made. And they also help with other things, like gasket thickness. Some small things, but I would say probably 95% of the design is my original.
Wow. So if somebody would like to start a project like you did, how much money do you need to start something like that? In the end, you need a prototype to start a Kickstarter campaign, right?
Yeah, indeed. So that's a really good question, because as you obviously know, for Kickstarter, you do need a prototype. For other platforms, you actually don't. So you can use just renderings, which are, of course, much cheaper than getting a prototype. So depending on how you want to launch it, it can be relatively cheap. But most companies, micro brands launching this way, they will probably pay, let's say, 5,000 to 10,000 for having prototypes made, and then doing some marketing around it, and then doing a Kickstarter or other crowdfunding platforms, and then basically buying the rest of the stuff as a result of a success there. So it doesn't have to be very expensive up front, but unfortunately I did it a very different way. So it did cost me a lot of money.
Okay. But in the end, it also costs a lot to communicate your project, in the end. But
yeah.
I think the advantage you have is your YouTube channel, and maybe you have also the email list or something.
Exactly.
And I hope you can make use of that. And
yeah. Well, exactly. I have about 3,000 people on the email list from my vintage company. So that also helps. Let's say the key difficulty is, out of those 3,000 people on my mailing list, some of them are like really good customers of my vintage company. So probably 100 people that have bought like 2 or 3 or more watches. But that has very low, let's say, reliability in terms of indication of whether or not they're going to buy a new watch. So if you have, 100,000 people in your mailing list, it could be like one of them buys a watch. It could be like 10,000 buy a watch. You have zero idea. So that's part of what this agency I'm working with for the Kickstarter actually do. They sort of I cannot reveal too much, I think, but their idea is that if someone sees an ad for the watch and they sign up on your mailing list, then we immediately mail them back and say, hey, if you put down $1 today, you will get the VIP price.
That's really what I saw when I watched these YouTube videos. I didn't launch the project on Kickstarter. I've thought about it, so but first I wanted to inform myself. But that's really the strategy I saw. You want to pay them $1 so they are really interested in that project,
Yeah. Because we design or designate those guys as VIPs. And then all of a sudden, you have the conversion metric that's proven over a lot of projects to be around 50%. So then it's just doing math, right? We say, okay, if I'm going to raise, 50 or let's say 20,000 euros, let's say 1,000 euros per watch, 20 watches, 40 VIPs.
So, but then you need to pay for ads, if I understood correctly.
Okay. Yeah, you do.
It's an interesting project, for sure.
Yeah. I'm also sending the watches out to some reviewers. So, yeah, it's exciting, a bit scary, but hope it will end well.
Yeah, it's interesting. And let's come to another topic. What kind of watches do you prefer, or what is your favorite watch and why?
You mean my favorite type of watch, or my favorite brand, or both?
Yeah, whatever. What would you say is your favorite watch? Really, in your collection?
Yeah, I probably have already given that away a little bit because I mentioned this JLC Memovox a couple of times. That is probably my favorite of my own collection. It's like an oversized gold Memovox in very nice condition from mid-60s, I think. I mostly like dress watches. I actually don't think I have any divers watches at all. And I also much prefer leather straps to bracelets. Bracelets just aren't that comfortable, I think. So yeah, most of my own collection has always been dress watches, also because I used to wear suits all the time, and sort of then, having a vintage watch with that would then more be like a dress watch, of course. And I do like vintage, obviously. I think it's also part of, getting a bit older that you start being a bit more sentimental about the good old days when you were sort of up and coming, instead of a has-been or things like that. I also think there was a big shift in the whole quality of watches in a lot of ways. As a watchmaker, watch repair person, if you will, you do tend to nerd a bit more about the movements than about, reference numbers and, the looks, that kind of thing. So for me, in terms of watchmaking, in terms of the movement, mechanics, all that things, I think that was much more interesting back in the vintage days because things were built to last. Nowadays,
and today it's not built to last.
No.
Really?
No. Oh yeah, really. Nowadays, watch movements are made to last 5 to 10 years. So that's also why it's so crazy expensive to service a watch nowadays, because they change out pretty much any part that shows any little wear. A big part of the reason for this is that, as you might know, all the wheels and pinions inside a watch, they're on a sort of axis, right? An arbor, if you will. And at the ends of that, we have very, very thin pivots, which they rotate on, right? and they typically rotate inside the jewel bearings. And to minimize friction, that arbor, the pivots are highly polished. They're steel, highly polished, and there's very little friction. In the old days, they burnished those pivots. Burnishing is a process in which you both compress the metal and at the same time polish it. Nowadays, they don't do that. They chemically polish them, which sort of, it makes the surface very, very even and polished, but it's just like a thin, thin, thin layer. So the second you have any sort of wear on it, it wears through the whole thing almost immediately. So that's why, 5-10 years, you need to change, half the gear train.
But is it a question of price I pay for a watch, or would you say in general movements are made like that today?
Movements are made like that. As a business model. That's why they earn so much money in servicing.
Okay, I didn't knew that. That's interesting.
So, there are, some exceptions to it. The higher cost brands that actually don't do all the machining, because, it's a little bit back to what we talked about with capitalism, right? That nowadays all these watch brands are big luxury concerns, corporations. So they want to minimize costs and maximize earnings. And you do that by making sure that your machinery doesn't wear out too fast, that you can, not cut corners per se, but that you can find faster, easier processes. And if you can at the same time make more money by selling spare parts 5 years from now, perfect. But not for the customer.
Okay, yeah. That's interesting. So another thing I would like you to ask, what would you recommend to somebody that wants to buy a vintage watch? What does he need to know? Is it, what would you recommend that person if he wants to buy a vintage watch?
I would say it depends on the knowledge you have. So if you're a very knowledgeable person, do a lot of research on the watch. If you're looking for one specific watch, or let's say 1, 2, or 3, like maybe similar watches.
So let's say, somebody just wants to buy a vintage Rolex because he likes Rolex and he also wants to be a bit like having something from the older times. So why not, why not buy a vintage Rolex? Because everybody wants a Rolex today, so I'm gonna buy a vintage Rolex.
Yeah. Now, if you don't know much about watches, then really it's about buying the seller. It's about making sure that you, let's say, only seriously look at watches from sellers with a really good rating. If it's on eBay, then you should have at least 99.5%, I would say, over at least 100 ratings. Otherwise, you have things like Trustpilot on all the platforms like Chrono24. You have their reviews. Personally, I think part of the reason that Vintage Watch Services is doing well is that I really instill that and everything I work on with the watchmakers and stuff, that when we sell a watch, it has to be really, really good. Because we are giving a warranty as well. So, if people return it, then it costs money for us. So it's better that we do that up front to make sure everything is spick and span and very good, very solid. Solid mechanics, accuracy, solid, that everything is original, clean, what have you. So, for someone just looking to buy a watch, a lot of people will also look to buy watches for someone special, and then they have basically no idea, right? Then it's really down to buying the seller.
And do you sell also your watches on Chrono24 and other platforms, or you just sell in your online shop?
I sell on Chrono24. So I think currently it's about 50-50 probably on Chrono24 in my own workshop. Thing is, Chrono24, yeah, what should I say?
Has a lot of fees.
Yeah, I started selling on Chrono24 in 2017, actually. Just like a hobby to begin with. Back then, the fees were flat 3%, and now it's like 10%. Plus, you have to pay a monthly fee for just having watches on the platform. So, yeah, their fees are really killing a lot of small businesses.
So that means if a listener wants to buy a vintage watch, you prefer them to go to vintagewatchservices.eu and buy it there, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are the prices different on Chrono24 and your online shop? Because somehow you need to earn this 10% or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah. So there's a small difference. Chrono24 auto imports the listings from my own site. So the price is basically the same, but on Chrono24, I add the shipping fees. On my own site, it's free shipping. But probably the biggest difference is that Chrono24 also grabs a lot of money in currency conversions. So if you're not paying in euros, if you're paying in francs or in dollars, pounds, yuan, what you have,
Then you lose money on the currency.
they charge I think they charge 3% extra or something in the currency conversion.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
So very greedy.
So would you like to tell the listeners something else, or if not, I have one last question, but
Yeah, I have a philosophical thing I want to perhaps address, but maybe do the last question first.
no, address that topic.
Okay. Yeah, so I think on my videos and in quite a few other videos, actually, I sort of say that to me, watches aren't actually timekeepers anymore. And there are quite a few people who say, why would anyone bother about a watch, a mechanical watch? And yeah, if you look at it as a timekeeping instrument, then there's no point bothering because, you have a much more accurate watch in your pocket, your cell phone. And there are watches on your fridge nowadays, or, wherever you go, there is a clock somewhere that is more accurate than a mechanical watch. So that sort of goes back to the whole thing about we still sell a lot of watches, but watches aren't, predominantly for timekeeping. They are an expression of your identity. They are a luxury item, especially for men. So I think there is a bright future for mechanical watches because it's just fascinating. I think all new mechanical watches should have a display case back. So you can sit there and look at it, and it's just fascinating for a lot of people, most people probably, seeing those little things move and, miraculously show time to have really, really impressive accuracy, actually, when you think about it. So I think the whole watch industry, I think, it is a pretty bright future, even though the technology is outdated 100 years ago. And I also think that's the same case for watchmaking. That, there's a big market out there. Rolex sells 1 million watches every year, and those will need to be serviced. And yeah, very happy about my choice, and I would recommend doing so to others.
I like that. Thank you. And I also see it like that because I think nowadays everything is getting more and more even digital and artificial, also with AI that pushes that. And I think something real, mechanical, you can look at it, maybe you can, as you do, service it by your own, and I think that will get more, that will be more valued by the people, And also, I think that's why your YouTube channel works. Also, real connections or the feeling of a real connection to somebody will also be a success factor, I think, for online video, things like that, implementing dad jokes or being yourself in your videos. I think that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Thank you.
can look to somebody, watch somebody else, and it's not interesting anymore. So,
yeah. No, there's a lot of YouTube videos out there now. I think just the last few years, it's, become a much more crowded environment. But yeah, I think I have my niche. I think there are some things I should really do differently to improve my videos and my overall, thing. And I'm actually working with a company to do that already. So we'll see.
mhm. So if a listener wants to reach out to you, what's your name on YouTube? What's the name of the website? And what's the name of your new website for your watch project? So, so we can let them know.
Yeah, so the vintage company's name is very inventive. It's Vintage Watch Services. And the website is vintagewatchservices.eu. And yeah, I know I'm not in the EU, but when I started it, this was in the EU. And it's a bit interesting because vintagewatchservices.com is owned by someone who has no activity on it. And I tried to get in touch with that person many times. So if you're listening, please get in touch with me because I would like to have that domain name. And it's the same on YouTube, the Vintage Watch Services. You'll probably find that once you start typing in vintage watch. And the brand I'm launching, it's Northern Watches. So it's northernwatches.com. And yeah.
That's it. Okay. So thank you very much. And thanks for taking time for this interview. It was really interesting.
Well, thank you. Very nice to chat with you and have the opportunity.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join our community, the Chronedo Circle. Sign up for free at chronedo.com/community. In the Chronedo Circle, you'll get exclusive giveaways, limited promotions from my podcast guests, and access to community chats where you can connect with other entrepreneurs and watch enthusiasts. Does that sound interesting for you? Then head over to chronedo.com/community and sign up for free. Stay tuned, more episodes with exciting guests are on the way. See you in the next episode, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram and YouTube. I appreciate that. Thanks.